All right, well, I think we can get started. We like to start our meetings on time to, model good behavior like teachers do. Welcome everybody to Manhattan Community Board 8 September 2022 Youth Education and Libraries Committee meeting. We hope everyone has had a nice summer. We haven't met in a couple of months. I'm joined by my co-chair, Vanessa Aronson, who will co-lead this meeting with me. We like to, in the beginning of the school year, invite leadership from the local district to talk to the community and to our committee about how things are going in the district with back to school. I'm particularly excited this year, Superintendent McGuire, to sort of have you here in a context where we're not talking about masking and testing and just COVID, which unfortunately has been, frankly, sort of the only thing we've talked to you about for the past few times we've had you at the committee. So, I'm excited. I think, on a personal level, and I've talked to a lot of parents in the community about just sort of how this school year really feels like the first close to normal school year in 2 entire years, as crazy as that sounds. So I know your time is limited and precious. I'll turn it over to Vanessa in case she wants to share anything, and then we'd love to turn it over to Superintendent Kelly McGuire of District 2, which oversees our local community here in Community Board 8, to tell us a little bit about how back to school is going, and open it up to questions from the committee and from the members of the public.
Thanks, Taina. Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Aronson. I'm Taina's co-chair. So excited to be here, excited to start the new school year. This was my first school year for my little one who's right here in a twos program. So we'll be in the district soon enough. I'm sure it'll fly by, but just hope everyone's having a great start, and we're so excited to have the superintendent here. So I will waste no time and pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm very happy to be here and to just share a little bit about the start of school. It's amazing how quickly things get going. We're just into this first full week, but it already feels second full week. I'm losing track of time already. But it already feels like, we're deep into the school year. So I can echo kind of some of the same feelings that you all have shared too, which is that people are incredibly excited to be focusing on teaching and learning. I mean, that is what got us into this line of work. And it's what our district is really known for, having excellent teaching and learning, and providing great opportunities for kids in schools. And that's where our energy has really been focused in the lead up to school, thinking about the goals that we're going to be working toward both as a district and how it is that we're going to be supporting the goals within each of our individual schools. And so I'm really happy to say that those goals are focused on where kids are at. Really focused on creating that excellent learning experience for kids, but also making sure that kids are feeling welcomed and supported when they're coming back into the school year. So we started the school year off with a bunch of different visits around the district, several of which were in Community Board 8. So myself, our deputy superintendent, and our newly expanded district team has really been out into all of our schools every single day, sometimes multiple schools a day. And we've been there welcoming families at the door in the morning, and then checking in with the principal and taking some time to walk around into classes. We have been very happy to see that when you visit a classroom, and I'm just thinking a little bit about classrooms that I visited most recently. Today, I was at PS 527 in your district, in our district. And last week, I was at PS 158. And so when we walk into the school and we look into classes, There are huge smiles on kids' faces, and teachers are doing that stuff that we know really works. Sitting down with kids, listening to them read, working on supporting kids who are performing at different levels, and just creating a really wonderful environment. So we're happy about the way that the year has started. A few things that are a bit unique for the year. First, we have a few new principals in our district. Stacy Lorraine is principal at PS 527, taking over from Dan McCormick. She was a longtime assistant principal at PS 151. And then there are several other principals who are in the district. Angela Rodriguez is a part of the pre-K center, and so she works out of several sites that are in Community Board 8. She has not just been supporting teachers in her site, but she's really been traveling around and supporting other community schools with their pre-K and 3K program, which has been really exciting. A couple of other unique and kind of new things that are going on too are an expansion of 3K at PS6. We added an additional section of 3K at PS6, and we're just seeing a lot of interest in those early childhood programs. And that's not just great for families of kids who are in those early grades, but also it's really wonderful as a way of building and sustaining parents in our district. We want all of our families that attend 3K to be able to go on to pre-K, and then from pre-K to go on to our kindergartens. And I know from speaking with our statistics office is that happens in District 2. And so we're happy to see that continue, and really want to be able to continue to build those relationships between parents and schools, and really foster the relationships between parents. As those parents know, the friends that you make in pre-K and kindergarten and elementary school are often the friends that will be with you throughout your child's educational career and beyond. So I know that's the case for me. And so those are some really exciting things. We are encountering some challenges. We are not seeing it so much in the schools that are in Community Board 8. But as many folks know, our city has welcomed a large number of families seeking asylum in New York City. The families that are coming to our district, or who are currently living in our district, are mainly on the West Side corridor. In total, we have welcomed, I think, probably getting pretty close to 200 kids into about 6 or 8 of our schools. Some on the West Side. PS 116, which is just south of Community Board 8, has about 20 new families, and Baruch Middle School also has about 15 new families that have joined, or kids that have joined, not families, kids that have joined and enrolled in those schools. So, the word is that the families have been incredibly grateful to be here and to be in our district, that the principals and teachers have welcomed them with open arms, and that the families are just so incredibly grateful, and have really told many stories that are sticking with us about leaving Venezuela, leaving Colombia, traveling through the jungle. I heard a story today about a girl who just enrolled at PS 51. And the mom was nervous about sending her to school today because she's been wearing the same clothes for the past 45 days. And so PS 51 actually has a wonderful resource there in the school, a huge closet that is filled with, or was filled with, clothing and other household goods that have been really supportive of families like this. And we're actually going to be distributing some ways that District 2 families and families around the city can help to support schools like PS 51 and this resource. So that is a challenge for sure. The numbers of kids who are enrolling in our schools, we don't get those names and numbers in as much time as we would like. So we are having to pivot a lot and create, make sure that families are being served in the way that they deserve. But we are doing it, and principals and teachers from around the district are constantly calling me saying that they want to reach out and help and support. We also, I know, might be atop of some of your minds is recently there was an incident in the public park that's adjacent to PS 198, which is a pretty scary incident involving some of our students who attend school in that building and some young people who are in the neighborhood and really behaved very dangerously, both towards the children who are playing there, who attend the school, and also some parents who were stepped in to intervene. So we've been in touch directly with the school safety offices in the Department of Education, who are in charge of supporting that both the safety in the building and in that park during school hours. This incident occurred after school hours, so we also reached out to the New York City Parks Department and NYPD and a few other community agencies to work together with them to see what it is that we can do to get some more support for patrolling that playground after school hours. We feel pretty confident about our ability to always keep our schools safe during school hours and on school property. This is just one of those unique setups that several of our schools have, where it's a playground that the kids are just very used to going to because they use it during the school day as an outlet after recess. So we want to make sure that those spaces are really safe for kids as well. And so we've had conversations right away at the start of the week, and they've been continuing. So we're hoping to be able to report something out directly to families that is some action and looking for, like I said, more patrol and presence in that park after school hours. And I'll just wrap up, just a quick note that you may have been hearing about the Department of Education and the way that we've been reorganizing. When I came in as superintendent in February, feels like a lifetime ago, but February 2021, we had 6 members on our District 2 team. But now we have 36 members on our District 2 team. So that has really expanded. Many of them are school facing, starting from pre-K all the way up through 8th grade, and some who will support in high schools as well, serving both academic, social, emotional learning, leadership support. So it is a process that we are going through to make sure that we're evaluating all of these folks, finding out what they're really good at, and then making sure that they are a part of our team and work in the district. So that's what I'll stop there. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you so much. Superintendent McGuire, it's always just such a pleasure to have you here. In the interest of time, I have questions, but I want to first open it up to the larger group with raise your hand. Please, we're a small group, so you will be unmuted as you raise your hand. I'd love to also thank you to my colleagues on the community board and on the committee that have joined, but also special thanks to folks in the community. I see folks that are on that are students themselves here in the district. So please, we love to have students and parents on to ask questions, and it's an opportunity for you to ask any questions you might have of the superintendent. But if you want to raise your virtual hand, and we'll unmute you.
And you can find the raise hand button under the reactions icon on your screen. Right now it's just Vanessa and you have questions. Oh, here we go. Tali. Go ahead, Tali.
Hi, Superintendent McGuire. I'm Tali. I'm a student. I'm a senior at Eleanor Roosevelt High School. And I think I talked to you last spring about our bathroom situation. And you actually fixed it a lot. So, I mean, the sinks just didn't work. So everyone was spreading germs and everyone got COVID. So you really helped with that. But we have another issue that I'd like to bring up. So none of our toilets flush anymore. Yeah, so in at least the girls' bathrooms, the toilets are clogged 100% of the time. So, and I've brought it up with my principal and the janitors, and all they do is lock the stall. So now there's like one working toilet in the whole school. And I figured since you're here, I might as well bring it up.
Yeah, that sounds gross. So I appreciate that, and we'll get on it. Thanks, Todd.
Can we go to James Thompson next, and then Elizabeth Rose and Judy Schneider?
Hi. My question relates to how the current process for getting into a high school is a lottery, and District 2 is really affected negatively by that. Something like 18% of the students in District 2 don't get any of their 15 choices. And we have lost, Bilingual used to be a district, a local school. Now it's open to everyone in the city. So there are not many spots. And the new laws for the classroom size is going to reduce the amount of seats available. So kids in this district are not going to have many options for high school, and they're going to have to travel. So I'd like to get your input on how you're going to address that, and how it would be possible to get back our local high schools when other districts have local zoned high schools, yet District 2 doesn't have zoned high schools, which doesn't seem very equitable. Thank you.
Thanks, James. If we could unmute the superintendent so he can respond.
Yeah, thanks so much, James, for that question. It is definitely a question that is top of mind for myself and other people, both in Manhattan and at the central office as well. So what we have been doing is this, and I agree with you that this process needs to be fixed, and that there needs to be greater access for kids and families who are attending our District 2 middle schools to be able to have access to schools in Manhattan. And so one of the things that we've been doing is that we've been engaging in some conversations with our enrollment office. We do anticipate that Chancellor Banks is going to be making an announcement and providing us with a little bit more direction and guidance in regard to how it is that he views our work in the process of creating an enrollment process and admissions process, both for middle schools and for high schools. I facilitated a conversation recently. I pulled together members of the central enrollment team, as well as Superintendent Bidelman, who is our new superintendent in Manhattan. And everybody is, I think, in agreement that the current situation is not what it is that we want to see moving forward. The work of creating high schools that are have priority for kids who either live in our district or live in our borough is going to involve some engagement directly with schools. And so that's a process that we are anticipating. We're going to get started, if not in the month of September, very much in the month of October. There are some goals that I know that the city has that are around, that I think that families would find very favorable, which are connected to accelerating the process of informing eighth graders of their high school placement, so that they don't have to head into this period of decision making around whether I'm going to go to a public high school or whether I'm going to go to a private high school. It benefits everybody to be able to get these decisions made quickly. In regard to the class size reduction bill, it is very new. I know it's been in conversation now for several months and throughout the summer. It is just recently signed by the governor, and so we are working and waiting a little bit in regard to how it is that the city anticipates this rolling out. It is a 5-year rollout. We don't anticipate any changes for the coming year, but we do know that there are going to be some changes that will ultimately take place over the next several years. And our district and school system is going to need to respond to that and think creatively about how it is that we're going to be in compliance with the law, as well as accommodate the students who live in our district and borough. And so definitely more to come on that one. I'm definitely learning more about it as time goes on, and I'm looking forward to partnering with our central office and learn more about how it is that they intend to see this law enacted in the district.
Thank you. If we could unmute Tali, who has one more question, and then let's go to Vanessa and then Judy.
Thank you. This is just a really quick question about the new Teach Hub platform. So I'm wondering how students can check their grades, because as of now it says I don't have access. So will I just be like not knowing my grades the whole year? Yeah.
No, so we're really excited. The central office has initiated some new applications that are going to be used in our schools, connected to grades, messaging, and attendance. Those are going to go into play in October. So it's not a surprise that you can't see it just yet, but it's exciting to think about the possibilities for having one system across the city where families are getting messages, kids are getting grades, not having to relearn a new grading system every single time they transition to a new grade level or to a new school level. It'll be a strong, safe, secure system. I think teachers are excited about this electronic attendance taking that they can do on an application on their phone or an iPad. And so it's been kind of a long time coming, and your grades are not that far off. They should be available soon.
I was just wondering because I was like, but my teachers are using it already and they seem to like it. So
good to hear it.
It's just funny I graduated high school 20 years ago, and Tali, we got our grades in the mail in an envelope. So we've made a lot of progress, but looks like we're advancing, which is exciting. Can we unmute Judy, and then let's go back to James and then Vanessa, please.
Well, Taina, I have to tell you, I used to get my grades on a report card that I brought home from school that my parents had to sign. So I go back a lot farther than anyone else on this program. I would like to, Mr. McGuire, ask a question which James brought up, and this goes back to the new regulation passed about class sizes. When I was on the board prior, we worked to getting 5 new schools, one of them a middle school, here in the district. And it kind of cut back on the huge wait lists and the problems that we were having. Now with these smaller class sizes, when it comes into being over the next coming years, aren't we going to need to see at least 1 or 2 more schools in the district to accommodate the smaller class size? What is the Board of Ed thinking about that and increasing their budget to be able to have more schools? I mean, I would think if the class size goes down, maybe this is a wrong assumption, they're going to have to look at the rezoning and have one or more new schools. Is that an incorrect assumption?
Just unmuting there. Yeah, I mean, you certainly are doing the math, right? And recognizing that if you have the same number of classrooms and the same number of students, they don't necessarily fit with fewer kids in the classroom. So I don't know exactly what the different options are going to be, or what the different ways that the Central Department of Education and city are going to, how it is that we're going to respond to the new law. But I do believe that we will figure it out, and that there may be different options that are going to be available to schools that serve different groups of kids. I've heard all kinds of different ways that this might work, but we will see. I'm just not entirely sure about how it is that the city is planning to implement the law. But I don't think that, I think that we can assume that there is going to be some type of plan that allows us to be able to keep all of the students that we have in our district and serve them in our schools. And maybe that will involve adding an additional school. I just am not sure, but I'm excited to put it into play, because I think that.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Smaller class sizes. Nobody can argue with that. That's a good move. So I was just wondering about that. And then I had two other questions. One, I don't know much about the people who are coming to seek asylum that are being sent to us on a daily basis. So although we may not have any students in our schools in this district now, if they keep coming at the rate they're coming, I think that we probably will get some. Do these, he's adorable, Vanessa. Do these students speak English? And if not, what does that affect where they're placed? Are they in a school that teaches them English? How does that work? I was read about it in the paper and I have no idea.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And actually, I'm learning a lot about it myself, just because we've been dealing with a large number of children and families. So yes, it may be that students come to schools that are in Community Board 8. We'll just kind of have to see. We'll have to see how it is that the city responds, and where it is that the city ends up placing families who are living in temporary housing. We know that there are families in all 5 boroughs who have come in the same way from border states. And so what happens is that the default is that families will enroll in the school to which they are zoned. So if they are living in PS 290 zone, then they will enroll at PS 290. All schools have services and supports to help students who are not English proficient. And the vast majority of students who are coming to our city are coming with very, very little English. There are some that are coming to our city with some English skills, but the vast majority have very limited English. So they may enroll at a school in which they are zoned and provided ENL supports to help them transition from their native language into a English-speaking culture. And then the other option is that in some of our schools, we are opening a class called the Transitional Bilingual class. And a Transitional Bilingual class is that which is, in this case, taught in Spanish and taught by a teacher who's fluent in Spanish. And those programs do not exist in all schools. When families come to a local elementary school, they're given a survey. And on that survey, they're informed of the different options that are available in the schools. And so some may opt to remain in the school that is closest to where they're living, and others may opt to enroll their children in a program that might be a little bit farther away, but has this transitional bilingual class. So as I mentioned at the start of my share here, is that this is, we don't have these programs set up all over the city, but we are working really closely with our central office to make sure that when a school opens a transitional bilingual class, they're provided with the funding, that they get the resources and materials that they need that might be in Spanish, and that they're supported in that effort to begin the child's education in a transitional bilingual class. So it's kind of a portfolio approach to how it is that we're supporting families, but so far we've been able to make it work with the number of families that have been enrolling in District 2 schools.
Well, thank you very
Thank you.
much. That's very interesting.
Thanks, Judy. Superintendent McGuire, I want to be respectful of your time. You've been so generous. I am not purposefully skipping over Elizabeth, Rose, and Vanessa. They have kindly yielded their time to members of the public, which I really appreciate. If you could just take one more question from Lakeisha Taylor. Lakeisha, who is a member of the public. I think Lev has a question, but we might email you that one.
I can.
Hi, Lakeisha.
I'll stay on for. I can stay on for 10 more minutes. Would be okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So generous of you, Lakeisha.
Especially for Elizabeth Rose and.
Hi, sir. How are you? Thank you. My name is Lakeisha Taylor. I am the co-founder of the Holmes Isaac Coalition. I live in District 2 on the Upper East Side. And I live in basically the only public housing development in District 2. And I have struggled with having my son in and out of a good public school. And I struggle with a lot of families who live in public housing because our public housing system, public housing generally are zoned out of good schools. And that is a problem that I find when I speak to a lot of different families throughout the city. And that is something that really needs to be addressed. You know, I speak to a lot of families within my development who do not appreciate their zone school, whether it is elementary, junior high, and we are struggling. You know, I was stressed all summer long because my son did not get into his top pick junior high school. I struggled when my son was in first grade. I had to pull him out of our zone school, put him in a charter school, and then was able to put him into a better elementary school. I am constantly having the same conversation with parents who are getting their children out of daycare and trying to put them into kindergarten because we are zoned out of the better elementary schools. And I hear the same thing about the schools on the west side. You know, the public housing developments are zoned directly out of the better elementary schools. And, you know, it's troubling to hear like people who are coming from other countries are getting, you know, their programs are, you know, we're giving them great programs. They're getting, you know, teachers specifically for them. But when we are here and we are struggling and we are poor and we are abused, we cannot even get into a good school. And we have to fight and have the extra burden put upon us just to get what we are entitled to. You know, and if we don't know the steps to go through to get these things, if I did not have my son's, you know, kindergarten teacher, counselor from his other school helping me, I would have had to wait a whole week for school to start in order to still have my son waitlisted to go into junior high school. I don't think that's a fair system, simply because I have to pay 30% of my income to live in public housing.
There are, so your child is currently in junior high, is that what you said?
We made it. We
Yeah.
made it, thankfully.
You're out, you're done.
The day
Right.
before school started, literally the day before school started, he got into Yorkville East the day before. But all summer long, I tell you, I was in knots. My head was hurting me. I went to Arizona to pick up my children because, again, Summer Rising was a horrible program for children. It did nothing. The pandemic did nothing. The promise of we are going to help children, we are going to, continue and give them extra help, the following year after, you did nothing. You did nothing. My children backslid, and the promise of helping them, you did nothing. I created a whole tutoring program for children in my development so that we could help our children here at Holmes Isaacs. You understand? Because the public school system did not help our children here. Okay? This is what I did and the Holmes Isaacs Coalition did to help the children here in public housing. Okay? Because the public school system here, which decided to draw the line around us so that we could not get into good schools, failed us. You understand? And this is what, and it's not just us, but in District 2, we are the only one. We are the only public housing development. You understand? And so I literally went on vacation to pick up my children from their grandmother to bring them home to continue the stressful idea of where is my son going to go? What school is he going to get into?
I am very happy to hear that your child is attending Yorkville. I was just there and speaking with Principal Riggio, Christina Riggio there. It's a really wonderful environment there in the building. It does sadden me to hear that your experience is not what it should be in all of our schools. It is not, I think that you probably would agree that like the challenge is not necessarily getting families into a few schools that are deemed good, but making sure that every school is excellent and can serve all kids. And so that's our work. And I do appreciate you raising it. I'll drop my email in the chat if there's ever anything that you want to talk about a little bit further, and about the experience that you had over the past few years. Love to hear about how things are going this year as well with you.
I'll drop my email, and I think you should reach out to me because I'm not unique.
Yeah, I don't have access to the chat, so I just was. Okay.
All right, it's not a problem.
I will.
Lakeisha, if you could, if you could just reach out to Lakeisha and just get her email, and then I will make sure that Superintendent McGuire has it. Lakeisha, your perspective is really important. You've joined past committee meetings before, and I think I know you add a perspective that this committee, I can admit as a co-chair, does not hear often enough. So thank you so much, and Will will make sure that the superintendent does have your email. We have like a limited weird way for messaging, so we kind of can't do that.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
I just got it and I will.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
If we could just unmute Elizabeth Rose real quick and have her sort of have the last question. I always appreciate hearing your perspective. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thanks, Tanya. Kelly, how are you? So good to see you. Congratulations on your reappointment. That was really gratifying to see, although I don't think any of us felt that was in doubt. On a very side note, I would please send my best to Dan McCormick. I'd love to know what he's doing. I was part of the team that helped him start that school, and so that was incredibly exciting, and sad to hear that he is leaving. I think you've heard the concerns of the community around high schools and the admission process. I guess my two messages that I'd love to leave you with are: A, we would like to be helpful. We would like to be a resource. Also on the committee and here tonight, Mohit Agrawal, a new member of the community board, he and I have been talking about what can we help in terms of how do we think about this analytically? How do we think about what families are not getting in the schools that they're being assigned to? Because we know there are more qualified candidates for every school than there are, than there are seats. So how can we help with making the schools that are in our community area, broadly speaking, serve the needs of our community? Because right now, clearly what we're hearing from parents is many of them are not, and that is why they are frustrated when they're not getting into the schools that they're putting on their applications. And we know that that is a challenge, but we would like to be a resource. We'd like to be a resource to Superintendent Beadleman, and we'd like to be part of the conversation. So how can we help? And then finally, I just completely agree with you that the parents you meet when your kids are in kindergarten and elementary school are still the parents that I run into in the community, in the neighborhood, and we are now catching up with our kids who are in college. So you're absolutely right.
I was just unmuted, so I could share like one quick thing, or just like a thought that I had is, over the past few years, a lot of decisions in regard to enrollment were left with individual school communities. And I think there's something important about school communities being able to have a say in how it is that they want their school to run. The problem I do think that we encountered was that this swung in a way that left District 2 and folks in Manhattan in a spot that was left like a very disproportionate scenario for us. In the outer boroughs, there are zoned schools. And so I think that offering a variety of, being able to offer a variety of schools in the district is important. But I wish that in District 2 in Manhattan, we had a big zone school like they have in parts of Brooklyn that offers a variety of programs for kids, accelerated programs, arts programs, all of that kind of thing. And we're just not in that spot right now. But I do think that something like that would be very much appreciated. There are still going to be small schools in our district and in Manhattan, but we also need a great option that is going to be here and available, and for which our kids and families are prioritized. So that's a conversation I've been having with the enrollment office, and I am happy to see that there are more schools that are being recognized for the good work that they've been doing and the good work that principals have been doing. And I think that the issue right now is that is often left to the leadership in the school and not necessarily a comprehensive approach to how it is that this issue and challenge of high schools is being addressed. So I'm with you and appreciate it. And it's a really challenging situation that we're in. But Superintendent Beadleman is very open to working and talking both with me and with his principals about this. And so I think that there's some potential for some good work ahead.
That's great. And it's great to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you so much, Superintendent McGuire. Thank you for giving us an extra 15 minutes of your time. It's always just such a pleasure to have you join us and to have you just answer all the questions you get, challenging or not. And again, like, I think like Tally said it best, that you come here and when students and parents have voiced concerns as minor, and they're not minor, right? As like a bathroom faucet not working, we have seen that you've acted, and so we really appreciate that you are so thoughtful when you come to these meetings, and whatever you do behind the scenes quietly, we appreciate you taking our community members' concerns into account. And thank you so much. Best of luck with the rest of the beginning of the school year. I know you have other obligations. We're going to move on to the rest of our agenda, but you are free to sign off.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks everyone. I'm going to turn over the second portion of our agenda to my co-chair, Vanessa. We're excited to have Brandon Jordan here from Councilmember Julie Menon's office. Hi, Brandon, and thanks for waiting patiently. I know we're starting a little later than we told you, but I'll turn it over to Vanessa to sort of lead this conversation, which is about youth in our community, slightly younger, who I think, and I say this as the co-chair of the committee, I just don't think we've done a great job of acknowledging the fact that there are issues in our community, with youth and childcare that are, sort of even pre-3K. So I'm going to turn this over to Vanessa to lead this conversation.
Thanks, Taina. As Taina mentioned, we're really excited to have Brandon Jordan here. He's the legislative director for Councilmember Julie Menon. And what we've invited him to speak about is a package of legislation that Councilmember Menon has introduced that would pave the way for universal child care. And I'm a case in point right now because my son was just jumping on the couch right here next to it. Case in point about how important childcare is here, especially for children who are not yet school aged. So Brandon, thank you so much for coming. We were hoping you could start by just sort of introducing, I know it's a package of bills, so maybe just giving a brief overview for anyone who's not familiar or hasn't seen it in the news yet about the bills, and then give us what information you can about sort of the status, how the council member is feeling about this legislation, and sort of what your focus is right now on as legislative director in hoping to get these through.
Sure. And thank you so much, Vanessa. And thank you for inviting me on behalf of the council member here. And thank you, Will, for sharing those resources as well. I just want to say first, I think universal child care is just it's a crisis onto itself. Of the 25 there are 25 of 50 state of the state addresses, or 25 governors, Republican and Democrat, mention child care and early education in their state of addresses. I think everyone here, especially Vanessa, as you know, it's huge. A lot of times child care is dependent on income in reality rather than on need. And so this package of bills, 5 bills in particular by the council member, is basically designed to really address this head on and to make sure that we can move toward universal childcare. And to really explain it a little bit more, from what we've gathered, the city comptroller found back in 2019 is that childcare costs just for infants between less than 18 months is $21,000 per year. And from 2015 to 2020, at least 1,100 childcare centers have closed. I think, again, just to really emphasize the gravity of the situation before going into these 5 bills. So the 5 bills that we have within our package is, one, to create a child care directory. Basically, if you want to find a child care facility, you can find it online. It's very easy for you to find. You don't want to put all that extra work in finding where this place or where this place. No, we want one single central location so the burden is not on families and caregivers. The second is creating a 7-person task force to study more on childcare. What are the challenges? How much will it cost? We really want everyone's input, and we mean everyone, the administration, the city comptroller, the public advocate, the speaker, to have this 7-person task force to study and help us get toward universal childcare. The third is listing all childcare subsidies, federal, state, local. It ties into the first. You have all these different subsidies listed in all these different websites, but you just have to track them down and play detective. No, we want a single portal that's just easy for people to use. The fourth one, and that ties into the cost of all these childcare centers, is providing for those that are at risk of closure or displacement, a $1,000 grant for full-time employees to childcare centers, capped at 20 full-time employees. The intention here is that, going back to that statistic of 1,100 childcare centers closing in 5 years, it's 2022, and we still hear stories of childcare centers that are really struggling and not paying as much. And this is really designed to help out those centers because they've dealt with so much. And the last one is a certification program for childcare facilities, specifically for all buildings that are home to childcare centers. This is basically designed that you can go in your neighborhood and then you can see through some sort of symbol that this place is a childcare facility. These 5 bills are basically intended to help move us toward universal childcare, and they were last heard before the Committee on Women and Gender Equity in late June, I believe June 29th. Right now, we have a supermajority, or about supermajority of council members on 4 of the 5 bills. And we're negotiating with the administration to hopefully get this over the line and make New York City the first city in the country to pass comprehensive legislation like this to move toward childcare, universal childcare. And what we're hoping is that that could be done on October 12th, where we finish everything, get it over the line. We invite all of you, all the people here tonight, to join us that day on October 12th, 11 a.m., where, if everything goes well, we can celebrate. We can actually have this monumental achievement because the council member is very excited about this. She is a working mother of 4. She understands this issue very personally. And, as someone representing her today, I've seen her really be passionate and put a lot of effort and time into this. And so we really are committed to seeing this go over the line. And I'm happy to answer any questions relating to this bill or to the topic at hand as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that update. My son is now playing the keyboard. And so I don't know if you can hear me over that. Okay, you can. Okay, then I'll transition. So thank you so much for that. I know personally, especially the directory bills was not something that I understood why it was so needed until I was in that position myself. So we will have time for questions. So I'm gonna just share, I guess, again, a little bit about my experience, but while people raise their hands, our first choice childcare provider did close during COVID, and our second choice is still waiting for some licenses. So we had to do a whole different option than we thought we'd had, and it really is impossible to figure out what is around us. Some of them are run through different religious centers. It's not a simple Google search. It's not, and it's just a really complicated issue. So I knew before becoming a mother that there wasn't a lot of childcare options, and obviously that the cost is really prohibitive to a lot of people. I didn't realize how important just having a directory would be until I was in that position myself. So thank you for that. Again, if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and we'll get a chance to call on some people. Why don't we start with Judy, since she had her hand up? Oh, sorry, I didn't see Boaz. We'll get to you next.
I just wanted to know, Brandon, would it be helpful if the community board passed a resolution on this issue, or wouldn't that be any help at this point?
No, that's a good question. I mean, you're free to pass resolution. I think, we're really aiming toward October 12th. And I can provide a little bit more detail as to why, to seeing the city council pass this legislation. You want to build and help us get to that. Let me rephrase it. If you want to help us build even more momentum for this, I'm sure the council member wouldn't mind that at all. But the more people in this large coalition that we have, the better, I would say.
Yeah, Judy, one of the things I talked to Councilmember Menon about, and I think the timing was not unfortunate, it was just the reality. Like we didn't meet over the summer, and that's sort of when all of this started getting active and becoming relevant. Unfortunately, by the time that this sort of hits the council and goes for a vote, it's before
I
a full
just
board
looked at
meeting.
the calendar. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
late.
happy to pass something at the committee level, but it won't like go to
No,
the full board.
I
And
don't
I know that
believe
there's
in
members that are
doing
gonna-
it if it's not going to do anything. So forget. I asked.
Yeah. But Brandon, and I shared this with the councilman, like we will share. I mean, I'm happy to. I mean, I haven't checked with Vanessa, but I am happy to, go as co-chair of the committee and speak at the rally and attend and encourage folks to attend. I mean, I think it is like an important package of legislation, and we are definitely supportive. Unfortunately, the timing was like such that we hadn't met for 2 months. So. Oh, okay. Can we unmute Boaz, please?
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, perfect. So Brandon, I want to ask you, I don't know how much you know the situation here in the Upper East Side, but I'm just curious. So I have a newborn, 3 months newborn. My wife basically has to return back to work in a month. So we started the look for, I guess late, we started to look for a childcare. So on one end, all the childcares that we were reaching out, they are all full. Like we are in some kind of a waiting list, and so that's my question. How come there are no more childcare centers being open? It seems like it's like a competitive. It seems like there is money into it. I mean, why not? I mean, I don't know. People are opening left and right childcare. So I'm just curious because you mentioned. I think that you mentioned 21,000 in Upper East Side. It's. I mean, at least from my research that I've done, it's at minimum, it's like $3,000 a month. So if you do the calculation, it's over 30,000. So that's basically so on one end it seems like there is very high demand. Everything is wait list, and on the other end, I don't see lots of new centers being open. So it seems like the free market is not doing what it's supposed to do because I read some report. I'm very interested in this subject, and I read the report that, like during COVID, lots of centers closed, and they're saying that people that works in childcare are under, it's getting minimum wage, but it seems I don't know where the money goes because it seems like it's very expensive. I don't know if you have any comments. What's your thoughts about it?
Let me unmute Brandon, please.
Thank you. No, you bring up a lot of great points there. I heard from someone who basically told me, I spent on childcare $2,300. And that was the cheapest one I could find around my neighborhood. Yeah. And that really highlights that not only are you just looking at these centers, you're actually looking at the prices, and you have to compare each one. Sometimes you have to do trade-offs. This is cheaper, but this is a little bit farther, but this is closer, but it costs a little bit. It's so complicated. And I think you bring up another interesting point as to, what is happening at these centers. They're not expanding. There are a variety of issues there. They're limited to only the first floor. That's in the administrative code. They can't go much higher. They're prohibited from doing that. The workers there, from my understanding, 90% of childcare workers are women in the city, and 1 in 4, or about 25%, live in poverty. The wages are so low. It is a crisis.
So where does the money goes? Where is all the money? I mean, let's say that, where to the owners of the place?
I mean, in some cases for these childcare centers, especially after the pandemic, where there was closures, you couldn't have these things, the costs just keep rising and rising and rising. Whether it be rent, whether it be, keeping supplies in. And, when you're reopening these places, maybe you won't have as much people, maybe you won't have enough children as you did prior to the pandemic. So you have to make decisions. And for some of them, in the case before the pandemic, they're just closing. They're on the risk of closure. And that's just an issue of the money coming into these places, because you have so many different restrictions and you have to really navigate these different conversations. And unfortunately, it's a burden on these providers, it's a burden on these workers, it's a burden on these parents, these caregivers. And unfortunately, no one wins. And the worst of all is that, kids really need a lot of attention and a lot of assistance. And these centers are a great place. And I think the council member comes from that perspective of, this is very much needed, but the environment is just not there for it. And that's why we really need to think differently and work toward something different. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And just a follow-up question, I'm just curious, how hard is it to open a childcare? Let's say that I'm going crazy, I want to open a center. It's like I just need the paper from it seems like something is, because on one end, I see that there is wait list everywhere. I mean, prices, we're actually paying money to be in the wait list on those chats. I've never seen something where you pay money to be in the shortlist. So I would assume that if there was an easy way to get into this business, there would be more centers being open, specifically for newborns, like a 3, 4, I don't know, let's say that I want to open a center with my wife for 3, 4 new. How hard is it to do it today in New York City?
I like the way you phrase it. If there's an easy way to do this, there'd be more childcare centers. And unfortunately, there just isn't an easy way to do this, where you have to deal with a variety of agencies, you have to get permits, you have to just really review applications, submit them, you wait for that. You have to be mindful of, where you can actually place that facility. Because again, keep in mind, you're only limited to the first floor. You can't go above that.
It's a problem. Why is that?
Why?
Do you know why I cannot open a childcare in 5th floor?
A fire safety reason. So if there's a fire, exactly how are you going to go from the 5th floor? That's why it's instituted there. But I think really the main point here is that there just isn't an easy way for childcare. And it's so astounding where in a city of 8 million people with many families, there hasn't been any serious level of conversation around this very issue. And I think this package of bills can really help push us toward that and at least make it much easier, because I don't know, I'm not a parent myself. I'll be transparent about that. But I think the intent here is to actually ease the burden, because no one wants to spend hours and hours figuring out where to go. They just want something simple, easy, because they have enough stress that they're dealing with.
I agree. And last comment from my end is, first of all, yes. I mean, if you guys can put some kind of website, this I think it shouldn't be too hard. Just a website with all the, put a zip code and all the relevant childcare centers, legal childcare centers in the area. That would be great. The second thing, I'm personally fully support universal childcare. I'm a free market person, but I think from education perspective, this is like the minimum that the government, the city should provide. But I think and I like to say that one of the things that you guys are going to do is basically build a team that will do a research on what is needed, because I think that, for example, here we are in Community Board 8, Upper East Side, Roosevelt Island. It's our challenge with childcare is a bit different, for example, Long Island or upstate New York. And you can actually see it in a network of childcare schools, where you can see that in Upper East Side, the same center will cost more in Upper East Side than, I don't know, in Long Island. So yeah, it's I don't know how much. If eventually I will pay less. I mean, I'm all in favor. But regardless, I mean, I think that it's about time that the city, the state, will start looking into this more seriously. Thank you very much for all your work. Thank you.
And thank you, Boz. I always tell you, you need to apply to the community board and join our committee. We really appreciate you and your perspective. I think, look, I want to call on Lakeisha and then Mohit. I think, unfortunately, the questions you're asking are incredibly fair, and there's no easy answer, right? And there is truly no correlation, unfortunately, between the amount that a parent pays for childcare and there is just no correlation. We see it sort of from early childcare through 12th grade, right? Why does the city of New York have a $40 billion budget for the Department of Education, which is larger than the entire budget of most states in this country? And most people in this city are displeased with the level of education that their kids are getting, right? That is the question of the century, right? So it's sort of not dollars that go in, right? It's not, I wish it was as easy as that. And I think also to your point where you said, if you're a parent that's paying $2,300 and the providers are underpaid, where's that money going? It's another $64 million question, right? It's our educators are underpaid at every level, right? There's just a lot of, I don't have an easy answer to it, but so anyway, I just wanted to I think it is a problem, and it's not just, we saw so many educators really leaving the system, in particular in the pandemic, when we asked even more of them than we already asked of them in a traditional setting. So I know you and I have spoken, and you did not grow up in this country, and it is embarrassing that in this country and in this city with so much wealth that we're having conversations like this. But anyway, if we could just, I think Lakeisha had her hand raised. I don't see her anymore. So
Yes, no, I was waiting for you. Oh,
great. Oh,
yeah, no,
okay,
I was just waiting for you to stop.
I'm going to stop now. You go ahead.
My question basically, I didn't hear anything about violations and ratings. Is there going to be a way to check once the people, the daycares get on this list, DOH also, inspect daycares. So we have to be able to monitor daycares, because daycares can get violations for a number of reasons. So how are we supposed to, once you get on a list, you can stay on a list, and then that doesn't mean that you're still in good standing. So is this list going to be monitored? Or are people going to be able to get on and get off? Or is this you're on the list and that's it, you're on the list? Because that's something that people need to be aware of. And if you're a first-time parent and you don't know about these things, children can be put in a dangerous situation because they don't know that this daycare is open, but yet they're operating with violations, and they may not have certified teachers. They may not have, the correct credentials to be operating at this time, because they were put on this list 3 years ago or something, or whatever. I hope, this is great. I love what's going on, because again, when I had my son and he was 2, I used to have to take him to work all the way in the Bronx with me, because there were no affordable daycares on the Upper East Side, or everything was, filled, and they had no spaces for an infant. And that's the hardest, bracket to fill. It is extremely hard to find a space for an infant. So I literally had to wait until my child was until he was 3 years old to go into a daycare, and he was in home care providers, and I had to take him all the way to the Bronx to go to school, to go to a home care provider where I was working. So on the Upper East Side, I didn't have that money. I can't pay $2,200 a month. I can't pay that, and there are a lot of people who cannot do that. So we are forced to take our children elsewhere and travel. to find places that are affordable and to find people that are licensed. You understand? So there are a lot of things that you have to look for. And in making this list, you also should think about the do's and don'ts and what to look for when you're looking for a daycare, because first time parents may not know what to look for. That's just something that I, want to say.
No, it's all, everything you're saying is completely fair. And I think, something you touched upon that I didn't touch upon at the top of the conversation is childcare deserts that are across the entire city. And how much of that is a challenge where certain communities just don't have facilities relative to others. To really talk about the questions and concerns that you've raised, at least in the portal of all the facilities that are childcare, the intention there is you actually can see the status of that very permit, whether it's from the city or the state. So anyone can go online, search by zip code, community district, you name it, and they can look at all these facilities and they would see the permit status. In addition, they would see if you want, like, maybe this is not related, but somewhat related. If you want to look for federal, state, or local subsidies, your privacy would be protected. When there's a child care certified building owners would have to file an application. But if they're in violation of that, then it would be taken away from them. And that would be, very clear for people who see that. And then again, with the task force, these concerns on a more macro level can be shared with people of, are we actually doing a lot to educate the public as to what their options are? Or do we need to do a better job? I think for government, at least from my perspective, and I would say maybe for the council member too, we want a dynamic system, a fluid system that's more responsive to the general public, rather than set something in stone, call it a day, if that makes sense.
Okay, I have this, you said something which triggers something. And we have a daycare right downstairs in front that used to be connected to our development. But they just told me that they used to be able to accept ACD vouchers. But now that they now are affiliated with 3K and 2K or whatever from the DOE, they are now not able to accept vouchers. So therefore, anyone who lives in this development who will most likely be eligible for HRA, ACD, or any kind of voucher cannot even put their child in this daycare. And now this daycare, they're at risk of closing down because they don't have enough children, because DOE has a backlog of children and they're not funding them. And so now they're underfunded by DOE, and they cannot take any child that has a voucher. So now a parent who has a low, who is low income and may have a voucher cannot send their child there, and DOE is not even giving them children. So it's a lose-lose situation. So this is something that, and now back in the day when DOE had a problem, you can go straight to 333 7th Avenue, where the DOE District 2 office was, and you can go deal with it. But now you can't even, you have to make an appointment. So now our local daycare is stuck. And this is a problem. So you're failing on two different levels.
Yeah, look, that's very interesting. I hadn't heard of that particular case, but I think the point you've raised is right, that everyone loses in the situation. And the idea that we have through having ACS give $1,000 to each full-time employee of a childcare facility, that's just more assistance for these childcare facilities. Because in that situation, what are you going to do? I mean, the first thought from what you're saying is this facility is going to close down because now their backs against the wall. Because DOE just changes it up, changes the rules and regulations. And it's an unfortunate part of this. And so we want to really acknowledge, because there's so many other stories of childcare facilities who they may not have identical problems, but really ultimately lead to, I'm going to close down these doors. And that's why over 1,000 closed in just 5 years in the city. And it's astounding. It's generally astounding.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think Mohit has a question, and we'll probably make this the last question. Thanks.
Hey, thanks. Just want to make a couple of quick comments. First, similar to Boaz, I have a almost 4-month-old now. We did find an infant daycare slot for her. And today she decided to fall asleep on me. So I am baby carrying a sleeping baby because she just didn't like her bassinet this evening. But so, on the general topic then, so a couple of questions. One is, who are the counterparties from the administration we're negotiating this? Is this a ACS issue? Is this a DOE issue? And to the previous points from Lakeisha, I think parts of the challenge here is that early ed or childcare kind of falls in between the cracks between different agencies.
Right. What was the second one?
ACS and DOE. So are those the counterparties you've been negotiating with, or in general, who are the city agencies that you've been working with on this?
Okay. So in terms of who we're negotiating with the mayor's administration in general. So that can include these different agencies, but the mayor's office, that's who we're talking with and really sitting down. That would probably include DOE, ACS. But the central office itself under the mayor, that's who we're talking with, and we're coordinating as well with the city council to be in those conversations, just for technical reasons, of course, because this is a package of bills and it's all written in language that anyone can find online, and it does amend the administrative code of New York City. We have to make sure that they're there. It's just standard procedure. But yes, generally the mayor's office and the agencies under. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that does. That's helpful actually, because that tells me there's like a cross-agency priority here, that the mayor's office is directly involved. So that's really good to hear. There was a recent article I saw it this morning in the New York Times, a recent article about a shift in priority from the mayor away from universal 3K towards younger children, and would love to hear your perspective on whatever you might know about that and how that impacts this package of bills.
No, certainly. We saw that as well this morning. I took a brief glimpse of it this morning as well. In terms of this bill, for 3K and 4K, I can't really say for certain. I didn't know about it prior to reading the New York Times article. But I think really the emphasis here is that for us in our package of bills, we really want to move forward toward universal childcare and to really establish that these bills can be done and can be designed. I think we have a majority of the city council behind us that can really push forward. And I've been in government for quite some time, and the most important thing is to codify these things into law. So if we have a holistic approach to these things, and I certainly don't know the rationale, the specific rationale that the mayor had in terms of 3K, we really want to put a lot of focus and attention as to what exactly is this bill going to do. And I think breaking it down as to who are the audiences that we have for these bills? Who are the stakeholders? Who's going to benefit here? How can this get accomplished? Who are our supporters outside of city council? We are well aware of all these different questions, and I certainly am when in the early days when these bills are being drafted. And I think we're confident enough to see it be done and hopefully get it passed and then on October 12th.
Couple more things. So that's great. So in the directory, and this goes a little bit to what Lakeisha was asking as well. So in the directory, will there be some kind of quality rating? And I guess a deeper question is, does the city or the state have a QRS, a quality rating system for early ed providers, which I'm familiar with that most states do, but I'm actually not sure about New York.
In terms of quality rating, I don't know if it will have one. Is there something particularly you were thinking about and sort of specific quality you like to see in terms of the portal?
Well, I mean, going back 10 years now, most states set up QRSs, and these are supposed to measure the quality of early ed providers. I'm much more familiar with the system in Connecticut than I am here in New York. And in Connecticut, there was a major overhaul in the last few years in their QRS. And the QRS is linked directly to the level of voucher support. And so to childcare providers who do accept the state voucher, they get higher voucher amounts if they are rated higher on quality. So the idea here is that, that there is a link between childcare quality and outcomes such as something as long lasting as, do children go to college or do they graduate from college, right? These are things that have been shown to be related to the quality of early ed. So the question then is, if the city or the state does have a QRS, which I suspect they do, I should just Google this, but I suspect they do, will the quality ratings then be something that is shown in the directory so that parents can make choices for childcare based on quality and not just any other factor, right? We want to provide more information, not less. Of course, childcare centers have to have openings. Of course, you have to be able to afford it, et cetera, et cetera. But if quality ratings are available, is that something that the directory would showcase?
Okay, I see. Well, for the state, I'm sure, as you may know, it's outside of city's jurisdiction, so I wouldn't be able to know. But I think in terms of the portal, directly, there wouldn't be some quality assurance. It would be more of, this is the name, the address, the phone number, the status of the permit, to be as objective as possible and to really give the facts for parents and caregivers so that it's just much easier than to go on Google and just look up childcare facilities near me and then spend who knows how long figuring out what is your best option.
And I'll just jump in here. I think, thank you, Brandon. I think, Mahit, this speaks to some of the dysfunction that happens in New York in terms of the various jurisdictions at the city and state level for all, not just early childhood, but frankly, at all levels of education. It's sort of like how, curriculum, there's the State Board of Regents and the City Department of Education. It is not as probably clear cut as it is in Connecticut. So to answer your question, and I will get you more information, but at the state level, I know that OCFS, which is the Office of Children and Family Services, is who is responsible for actually, that is where the quality care rating at the state level happens, is at OCFS. And I do think, to Brandon's point, because the city of New York, the Department of Education, has not historically had jurisdiction or taken accountability for children below the age of 4, these systems are not speaking to each other, is the short and unfortunate answer to your question. But yeah, OCFS is probably the closest. If Elizabeth Rose is still on, I think she probably knows a hell of a lot more than me about this. So feel free to raise your hand, Elizabeth, if you know a little bit more than me about this. But I do believe that it is, if we can unmute Elizabeth, I do believe that is very much a state quality system through OCFS, and it has not marred or sort of married with the city system.
I'm here. I was just eating dinner and I did you all needed to watch me chew. I actually don't know a lot about the quality rating systems for early childhood education. Basically in New York, they are licensed typically by DOHMH. So there is an additional agency there. And of course, DOHMH is primarily looking at the physical setup of, do they have appropriate space? Do they have appropriate bathrooms, or, and so on and so forth. I do know that early childhood within the DOE has done fairly extensive research on the quality of their programs and have recognized that they definitely had some greater variation in quality than they were hoping for. But I don't think that any of that information has been particularly public, nor is it tied to Mohit's questions. I don't think there is anything that ties the quality of centers or early childhood programs to voucher systems or supports for low-income families to move to these higher rated locations. So I think that is probably a pretty undermined area for New York City, and an area for real opportunity. But a big, I hate to say this, but Lakeisha actually hit on something that I had been concerned about from the time that New York City announced universal pre-K, which was that the obvious ultimate impact would be the closure of large numbers of centers. And that is clearly not in New York City's interest, and that there needs to be better ways to coordinate what will the DOE pay for, what will the city pay for in subsidies to support these centers, and what do families pay for. And that has to be able to vary age by age, because there are different funding streams and there are different rules. And it is horrifying to hear that a center that is working with the DOE and offering DOE's programs may be closing because they're not getting enough students, and they are now in a catch-22 position of not being able to accept private vouchers. So that is just a sign of lack of coordination. And with that,
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sorry to interrupt your dinner. I just knew
No
you
worries.
would jump in and provide context I didn't have.
I just quickly from Google, it looks like there's a state agency called the Council on Children and Families, which is developing a state QRS. So it does not seem to be fully out there just yet. And just one last thing on quality. Another way of measuring quality is through third-party certification programs. The NAEYC is the big one. And so as part of the directory, I think it'd be nice to see if a center has one of these third-party qualifications. Lastly, there's like really big picture question on like the 5 or 10 year vision here for early ed in New York. Particularly given the news this morning that the city is pulling back on universal pre-K, and obviously given the news over the last year that Build Back Better is not going to have any of this, human capital investment, anything on the early ed side of the house in particular. What is the council member's vision here over the next 5 or 10 years? I mean, does she see the city as having, the key role here of making sure that early ed is affordable at whatever income level? So, no more than 7% of income towards childcare costs, which was the level set in the Build Back Better bill, or anything else along those lines. So, so could you help us kind of understand where the council member is coming from, and or the council at large in terms of this long-term vision? Because early ed, I think, is clearly just a massive need, but also just a massive cost. And would really love to hear, where this is going to be going over the next, decade or so.
Yeah, sure. It's actually a really good question. So the council member is aware that this is going to be a short-term and long-term issue, of course. So New York City, if it does pass, or not if, when it does pass this package of legislation, hopefully by next month, one of them is going to be that 7-member task force. And within the report, they would have to have hearings with many people giving comments. One of the things they would have to really look at is what is going to be the annual cost for the following 5 years associated with implementing universal childcare. I think a big question, of course, behind that article and already in conversations government is cost. It's always going to be a topic that people have. How much is universal how much is universal childcare going to cost? And, this task force would be really required to look at that and to also focus on other aspects of what are the challenges. We hear a lot on that issue of they're only on the first floor. Background checks take a long time. Is there enough staff? There's a wait list. And then other as well of what are the costs of expanding childcare subsidies to families in the city whose income equals to 300 to 400% of the federal poverty guidelines. Those things, while you do have a portal and that provides you details on subsidies and facilities, that doesn't mean the work is over. It means that a lot more has to be done and we get more people involved, because this is going to be an ongoing issue that the council member is fully aware of. And certainly we are continuing beyond this package of bills to really look at really moving toward universal childcare, because New York City is going to be the first one to actually, when this package of bills is going to be passed, to actually have this, to be leading the conversation as it always does as a big city, as a metropolis. And so we have to continually be that leader, to be that, I guess, pillar for all the other cities to look at and say, you know, New York City's doing this, so let's do it like this. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon. We really appreciate all of the perspectives on behalf of the council member, on behalf of your own experience. And this has been really, really informative. As we mentioned, our next board meeting will be after October 12th. So hopefully you won't even need us, but you have our support. I'm happy to join Taina, and if anyone else on the committee wants to join, Luvari is singing happy birthday. But yeah, please keep us. I don't know. But please keep us informed if anything changes before then. All right. Well, with that, I guess, do we have any old business? Any new business? Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. What a really interactive meeting, lots of discussion. I hope that you'll attend our future meetings. Ty, did we share what we're doing, what's upcoming?
We haven't. I was going to share that. I think, thank you everyone for joining. We hadn't met in a couple of months. Vanessa and I are really committed, just so you know, as a committee, and again, you know, trying to model good planning like educators do, really planning in advance. So we hope to really have the next 3 months of meetings planned out, so that we can tell you now what we plan to discuss at the next few meetings. So we will meet again in October. We hope then to bring together a panel of principals from the local community. I think, you know, we were being incredibly respectful of principals in our community over the past 2 years who, in addition to the incredible work that they do to educate our children, were dealing with this pandemic and Zoom school and COVID tests and masking, and it felt really unfair for us to, you know, ask them to take any additional time. But Vanessa and I are really committed to making sure that we're offering opportunities for local principals to come to these meetings and speak to you. So we are planning to invite principals from local elementary, middle school, and high schools. Welcome to your feedback, but we were thinking of starting with some of the larger schools in our community. So we plan to invite the principals of PS6, Robert Wagner Middle School, and Elro, the Eleanor Roosevelt High School, to come in and speak and have a panel discussion with members of the community in this committee in October. Our meetings are on the 4th Thursday of every month. And then in November, we hope to have a meeting where we, you know, another thing we reflected on was that the reality is that there are quite a number of parents in our community that choose to send their children to independent and parochial and religious schools. And they have needs too, and they're a part of our community too, and they have children too in our communities. And so, you know, we're thinking of, you know, we've seen a lot of great work that has happened, including a recent partnership between the Spence School and 2 local district schools, where the Spence School is giving gym space to local district schools. So, you know, welcome your thoughts. Please, you know, share them with us. We will, if you could like put mine and Vanessa's email in the chat for members of the public. But, you know, we'd like to have a broader conversation too with members of the community that have children that are in independent and parochial schools. And then we will not have a meeting in December because our meetings are on the 4th Thursday of the month. And I think most people are sort of checked out by the last week of December. So if you have ideas for other things that we should be talking about, this is how we like plan to continue running our meetings, really like planning ahead and letting you have the opportunity to tell us what we should and should not be talking about. Vanessa, anything else? Lev, you have been fabulous and fairly quiet.
We gotta go to bed. That's what's next.
Taina, I will flag that the 4th Thursday of November is
November is
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So your meeting is actually Wednesday, the 30th of November that month.
Even better. Great.
So just so everyone knows.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh my